All right, let's continue with the program. Let's quickly take a break. And when we come back, my first guest will be joining me. I'll be looking at Africa-China summit in Beijing and to see if Africa should actually be wary of Chinese loans. We'll be right back. Do stay. Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's still your favorite business program on television, coming to you on African Independent Television. Joining me right now is Rislanuddin Mohammed, the former managing director at Unity Bank, and we will be looking at Africa-China relationship. This romance has been going on for quite a while, the financial romance, actually, between Africa and China. So let's see, let's put some kind of perspectives into it. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm fine.
Now let's get started because we have quite a lot to talk about, and I also have another interview after the show. So let's see how we can do that.
Great.
I've heard so much about this catchphrase, win-win.
Yeah.
I've heard win-win, win-win, win-win. Within this past days that Africa and China have been meeting in Beijing.
Yeah.
Is it really a win-win situation? Is it an honest win-win?
Well, I think there are two ways about it. To the extent that African countries have endured a quote and unquote, terrible relationship with organizations like the World Bank and the IMF in terms of lending conditions and, conditions, political, economic conditions to lendings, you can say it is a good arrangement to Africa. To the extent that the loans are largely concessionary, to the extent that the loans have a longer term tenure, you can say the relationship really is a win-win or favors Africa. But we have to be very careful. Begin to ask ourselves a question. Why is China so much interested in economic rather than political? Because, like you, they have made it a policy that they don't interfere in affairs, political affairs. Whoever you want to have as your leader or ruler or dictator, it is your own problem. What they are interested in is the economic relationships. Why are they so much interested in such economic relationship? The extent that they offered Africa $60 billion. But if you disaggregate those $60 billion, you can see there is 10 billion concessionary loans for weak African countries. You can also see there is a sweetener of a 5 billion line for import finance from where? From China. And you can also take note of the fact that that 60 billion is not going to be just handed over as a check to African countries. That 60 billion will end up being tied to businesses with Chinese.
That's what it is.
Chinese contractors will come in.
We've
and
seen
take
a
over
lot
the
of them
business.
in Africa. During my intro, I said that we are seeing a lot of construction. So Africa is now like a construction site of the Chinese. It's like a branch of China in terms of construction. Do you think that Africans, especially like Nigerians now, should be feverish about China's position concerning our economy? Because I did read an article yesterday, and I hope that our viewers understand why we are talking about this. Because if we're talking about debt or loans, our government's going up and down, seeking for loans. Borrowing per se is not bad. But we're talking about if you're borrowing, what are you borrowing it for? Then debt sustainability, the management of the debt, and all of that. But we're actually saying that as Nigerians, each one of us have a part to play in repaying those loans. I read an article yesterday which said that the Chinese loans that we have so far in Nigeria, it would take a Nigerian to pay over 15,000 naira. To part with over 15,000 naira to pay those Chinese loans. So that's actually what it means. So people should understand what we are talking about. And when I'm talking here on the show, I'm not just talking gibberish or nonsense.
I also got to realize that, like I was just saying, all those loans are tied to their own projects. I just read that the Chinese Petroleum Corporation are underwriting our 2.3 billion Ajakuta, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano gas pipeline. Why are they underwriting it? The Chinese contractors will come, they will do the business, they will manage it, they will take their money. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that there is a balance in our trade relationships in every part of the world so that no country will dominate us. But the way things are going now, Chinese are bent on dominating Africa.
So do you think it's a new form or a new wave of neo-colonialism, economic colonialism?
We have had political colonialism for decades. What China are doing now is an indirect economic colonialism. They will succeed in doing it. Why will they succeed? Because most African countries have no alternative. That is why you can see the number of African leaders that are physically there. Most of them are in debt trap. Most of them have huge infrastructure gap, challenges with financing their budgets and so on. And this is a place where A, they can get money as loan, longer term tenure, B, they can be able to get it as a support fund, and C, China are also offering to write up debts of some weak African countries. So the sweetener is just too much,
to resist.
Yeah, exactly. But we have to be very careful. What is our, like you are saying rightly, the issue of debt sustainability. We are borrowing. What is our debt to GDP ratio? If our debt to GDP ratio, they said, is a technical term, it allows us to borrow. Some people from the come and say, no, you can borrow, your debt to GDP is okay. Okay, fine. What about the debt to revenue ratio?
Yes.
What is your capacity to repay? Mind you, in Nigeria, for example, from 2015 to date, our debt portfolio has skyrocketed.
I think it's about 23 trillion as at yesterday.
23 trillion naira. Okay, there's even an improvement from the data I got. It was 22 trillion. And it will continue to go up. Why? Because the sustainability is simply not there. Out of the total 23 trillion debt, about 12 trillion or about 12 or 13 trillion are local debts. And most of them are loans from in the fixed income market, treasury bills, bonds at a very high rate. And if you say you want to rebalance and take the loans dollar denominated, how assured are you that the country can be able to generate enough foreign exchange, to repay those debts? So it's a dicey situation for African countries. It's just Nigeria. For most African countries. So it is just a sweetener that is so difficult.
And
So
isn't it
difficult
also
not to take.
isn't it also worrisome that this administration has ballooned the debts of the country?
No, it is.
It's because
It
since
is,
this
absolutely.
administration, the debt has
We,
ballooned.
from 2015, with all sense of responsibility, I think we didn't get it right in terms of the funding gap we had, the deficit gap we had, and the whole talk about spend yourself out of recession, borrow, borrow to do what? You are borrowing for infrastructure, you are borrowing for roads. Are those roads repaying themselves? You are borrowing to build roads, but it is not the road that will repay the loans. You are relying, thinking, hoping that you'll continue to get more money from oil economy to repay the debt.
How justifiable is it that this trip now that the president has gone to in China and our debt or our loans from China is at $5 billion in the last 3 years? The president says that the projects would include the first urban rail system in West Africa, recently commissioned in Abuja, the upgrade of airport terminals, as well as the Zungeru hydroelectric power project. Isn't it also justified that, okay, we are getting this money from China, but these are the projects we're using them for?
No, it is justifiable. Those kind of projects, if you borrow for power project, if you borrow for, to rehabilitate your airport, those investments can repay themselves if they are well managed. There are no two ways about it. But if you borrow for a vanity project, then you have a problem because you cannot be able to repay. You'll have to rely on other subsectors of the economy, to repay those loans. That is where the extent to where you have the problem. And beyond even Nigeria, that is where most African countries will end up. Look, it is going to be very difficult if Chinese want to economically dominate Africa to insist even on tying funds to their project. At some point, they will have to release some of the funds to those African countries. I'll give you an example of Chad. When oil was discovered in Chad, they were looking for loans, and they had to seek support from the World Bank and the IMF. And they agreed, pre-agreed, before even the first oil well brought out oil out of Chad, that certain percentage of the money will be set aside in financial assets, more of our sovereign wealth fund, future generation fund. By the time the money started coming, President Deby used the money. They came from Washington, queried him, why are you using the money? Because I need to protect the oil wells. So he bought guns to reassert himself.
And that's what Europe and the Western countries don't do.
Yes.
Because I know that in China, for example, if you're seeking loans from China, they do not have that foreign corporate acts like the rest of the world where you would sign, like I think in the US, they have the Foreign Corporate Acts, Practices Act, that criminalizes bribes paid overseas, for example.
Yeah.
So China doesn't even,
they don't really care.
Attach or say.
They don't really care. They don't care about whatever you use the money for, whatever. They really don't care about your political inclinations. All they are after is the economic dominance. And with the challenges that the West are having, the trade wars, they are fighting themselves. Just last week, within a week, we saw 2 important European leaders coming into Nigeria. Coming not only Nigeria, coming to some
other
countries
African countries
in Africa. It means that everybody is looking for a market, and Africa is a huge market. And because of the paucity of funds.
Yeah, let me just halt you a bit. Sorry, I'm just afraid of the time, so I'm trying to run along. Wouldn't that also put the industrialization of Africa into question, or wouldn't it make it shaky? Because now you're looking at the export of cheap Chinese goods into Africa. You're also taking a look at the export of their labor into Africa. Shouldn't we call that into question?
I will go to the answer first. I do not think we are really industrializing, even if you have the documents in paper. I do not think we are really industrializing to the extent that we have for years remain an import-dependent economy. Any challenge with foreign exchange market will dovetail into all subsectors of the economy. There will be food inflation, there will be imported inflation, and so on and so forth. So we are yet to start industrializing. We have not.
Okay, which part
We
of
have
the
not.
which part of the divide are you? There's this controversy right now that why should Nigeria go and borrow $328 million for ICT backbone in Nigeria when $322 million of Abacha loot was given to us? That are we actually economically sensible to do that?
You see, that is
Does
why
it make sense?
that is why sometimes some people want to dictate to you as a country how you are going to utilize
Which they
your
did
own
for
money.
the $322 million.
Yes, that is why they want to dictate to you, because it really does not make any sense. When you recover such kind, typically the money belongs to Federation. So you know a money that will be, that the federal government would say they want to start sharing. You understand? Identify a project and utilize that money, you know, in employment generation, income enhancing project. But not just simply initiating a project that, you know, a vanity kind of, if I can use the word, project.
So in essence, the summary of what you've said is that we should be wary of Chinese investments in
We
Africa.
should be extremely wary. Chinese are coming, they are giving us money, but we will become economically dependent on them. Over time, everything will be imported from China. There is this arrangement, the Chinese yuan Naira exchange arrangement.
Okay, this currency swap.
So many, you know, even the 5 billion import financial line, what is it for?
Okay, so much to talk about when it comes to China. And also, we should also reiterate the fact that the AU building in Addis Ababa was built by the Chinese.
It's part of...
And they had their own issues that the whole place was bugged at the time, I think, some time ago. But I want to say many thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Rislanuddin Muhammad, the former managing director at Unity Bank. We've been looking at the FOCAC summit in Beijing. That's Africa-China relationship. We'll continue to monitor that closely. Let's quickly take a break.